Labour's new hardline policy has opened them up to a significant backlash from the left, and Zack Polanski is leading that charge.
Zack Polanski, how would you describe these plans?
Well, we've just heard that rebellions are under the radar. That's not good enough. Every single Labour MP needs to look to their conscience.
Why?
The interview we just heard, you said it yourself. The question was, you never told anyone when they voted they were voting for this. This is extreme, this is inhumane, and it is a government of cowards. Rather than take on the powerful, because the issue here is not immigration, it's inequality. They went for pensioners, they went for the disabled, and now they're going for people who are fleeing war and conflict. I am furious. So many people are furious because this is a totally unconscionable way to deal with things. And how dare the minister say we're an open, tolerant country? How dare she come tonight to Newsnight and talk about compassion at the same time they're talking about seizing people's assets? I am a child of Jewish ancestry. I am Jewish. We have seen this with Nazi Germany. We are seeing it in 2025. This government need to hang their heads in shame.
Freddie, are Shabana Mahmood's proposals a gift to the Greens?
God, I think that jewellery, mistake or leaving that clause in the Home Office briefings, which Shabana rode back on, probably is a gift to the Greens, because Zack Polanski gains a lot from framing Labour as fascist, as, reform light. We know that that's his political strategy. So, it's obvious that would be the kind of way that he would attack Labour. And I guess that's obviously the line that he chose there. I mean, look, the thing that Zack Polanski profits from, which he's been very effective at doing, is managing people's emotion and anger right now at the political crisis that we're living in, which is essentially an economic crisis, right? It's one that's happening all over across the world. We've had stagnation for 17 years. People feel as if their living standards, if not are stagnating, declining. And he's got a very strong attack line there, right? He's able to say that, hey, look, Labour are being reform here, and that puts him in a stronger position.
What do you think of this particular policy? I mean, I suppose you are still a Labour member. Often when we talk about Zack Polanski, we have sort of Helena talking about it, who's a Green Party member. I think most of the sort of core Novara people have left Labour for whatever reason. So I suppose, as a Labour member, what do you think of what Shabana Mahmood announced yesterday?
I actually agree with most of what the Home Secretary is trying to do here. I'm not a big fan of this kind of jewellery idea. I guess what they were thinking was, in the Danish model, they have a clause that if an asylum seeker has some assets that they own, I'm not talking about jewellery or sentimental items here, maybe it's a laptop or an e-scooter or whatever, then they should give that up to pay for the costs of their being housed. Now, apparently that's actually not enforced, that is used as a deterrent. And as your previous interview just pointed out, incentives do kind of matter here in how we manage how people, asylum seekers' attitudes to what's happening to immigration. I guess my concern is, like everyone else, the only people who've really, ended asylum seeking and closed the border is US taking a super hard line, I would say almost proto-fascist response with ICE, right? I don't want to see that in this country. I'm absolutely terrified by the notion that could happen in this country. You've got Piers Morgan going on Question Time saying stuff like, well, look, maybe we should deploy the army because we need to get a grip on these sorts of things. And maybe we should learn a bit from Trump on this sort of stuff. Of course, Reform are thinking, who has done this and how can we apply it here? And I'm just of the opinion that if the one thing that is driving support for the Reform Party fundamentally is about their prognosis on immigration, Reforms start from immigration, don't they? And they build their political coalition from that specific problem. And the way we've seen, politics unravel over the last year with the migrant hotel protests at Epping, last year Southport riots, this is clearly an unsustainable way to manage this specific issue. And immigration has as much salience as the economy right now as a political problem. And I think that the positioning of the left has been, instinctively we're pro-migration. The Obama coalition, right? Like Rainbow Coalition of People. I am a child of migration. I don't know if you are, Michael, but Aaron is a child of migration. Ash is a child of migration. Our natural instinct is to take a defensive posture on these issues. But I don't think that when you look at the data closely, and there's a great video, actually, Sky did a video going back to the Magna Carta about immigration percentage changes in population. So the percentage of immigration in created population change is unprecedented that we're living through right this moment. Now, the story of UK and like every place in the world, of course, is a story of migratory patterns. But that percentage is an important point, right? Because ultimately, there has to be some sort of level that a society can absorb a new population of people. It's been clear since 2010 that people have told us at every single election, essentially, that they want to lower immigration. Labour's positioning, Zack Polanski said there, we didn't vote for this. This wasn't in the manifesto. And to a degree, he's right, because Labour were really, and I remember thinking this at HQ in the time, we would say, we're going to smash the gangs. And in a way, we were like, this is a good line because everyone agrees that people dying in the Channel is wrong. But it didn't fundamentally explain what we were actually going to do. And we already knew that what was driving a wedge between the Tories and Reform was fundamentally an attitude to lowering immigration. And look, my position is I'm not a pro-net zero immigration person, but neither is the Home Secretary. We're obviously going to need to be a country of immigration. But I think the only way we can be a country of immigration is through control. And if we've learned anything about the way in which the far right have been insurgent in not just British, but let's say politics all across the world, it's by exploiting this specific issue. So the idea fundamentally that we don't do anything, I just think is flawed.
Let's talk about a significant difference between Denmark and here. So in Denmark, they have proportional representation, which meant that the Social Democrats could go for, I suppose, the socially conservative. I mean, it's not reform curious. There would be I think it's the Danish Popular Party, isn't it? But people who are sort of sympathetic to the right, sort of, the Social Democrats could position themselves in the centre there. And then if there were people who were completely outraged by this, they could go vote for the Greens or the left. And that would be fine. It wouldn't split the vote because they have proportional representation and they can go into coalition after the election. Here, the Labour Party, if we're talking about this purely in terms of electoral calculations, do have a more difficult game to play, I suppose, because it's not enough to just win those reform-curious people in the middle. If they then lose all of the Liberal left to the Greens, they're going to be in a problem. And that does seem likely to happen, I suppose. I'm going to go to two pieces of polling about this. So YouGov yesterday asked, thinking about people who come to the UK to seek asylum from war or persecution, do you think, and then if they are found to be genuine refugees, they should generally be allowed to settle permanently in the UK? Now, only 29% of people think that, compared to 51% who think that even if you're a genuine refugee, your stay should only be temporary until your home country is safe. And there's actually a majority for that position, that it should only be temporary, in all the parties, obviously much higher in the Conservatives and Reform. However, even if it is an overall popular policy, if it divides the left-wing vote, it could still help Reform. So a policy that's intended to stop Reform could help Reform. Let's look at YouGov's latest voting intention poll. So you've got Reform on 27, Labour on 19, Tories on 17, and the Greens on 17. The Greens are up 2 points since the last one. So we've already had sort of Find Out Now, which is a new pollster having the Greens ahead. It looks like in YouGov, which is sort of the gold standard pollster, I suppose, the Greens could be about to overtake Labour. Just talking electorally, do you think this could be a mistake, Freddie? Because they don't have the luxury of the Danish Social Democrats, which is a PR system. If you are, I suppose, sort of presenting yourselves as these incredibly tough on migration group of people, yeah, that might appeal to some people on the right, but you're going to shed more voters on your left, and then a divided left with a united right. The right does seem like it's going to unite behind Reform. That could be the worst of all worlds.
I think this is a significant problem for Labour. I know people are going to be upset with what I've been saying about immigration. I haven't read the comments yet, but I imagine you guys are cooking me. But, firstly, also, thank you for showing a YouGov poll. I thought we'd be getting a Find Out Now or a Merlin Strategies there. But yeah, look, this is obviously an issue. And I don't feel, as someone, of the left, that we should be abandoning Greens or, Lib Dems or whatever. I think that we need to figure out what is the project that is going to unite the left. Now, broadly speaking, you could have a cordon sanitaire and some coalition maybe of Greens and Labour and Lib Dems. I think it will never happen under Starmer for obvious reasons. Polanski made that really clear. I think Keir's made that really clear as well. But that's not going to be enough anyway, because that's not really a mandate to govern. I mean, the left needs to ask itself ultimately, do we believe that we should have control of our borders? I think everyone says yes to that question. then what level of immigration do we think genuinely makes sense? Ultimately, institutions survive because they're built on foundations of trust and belonging. What is clear right now is that people don't feel like they have trust in our institutions, and they don't feel like they have trust in their communities. Of course, we can make a material or analysis about why that's the case, and maybe we want to say it's downstream of economics. But there's something deeper is happening here that is dividing us. And I'm not saying this as somebody. I'm not like I really want to stress this. I'm not like a hard line anti-immigration, pull up the ladder sort of person. Bastani came onto our podcast and we spoke about this. And I said that it just feels now that we are in a moment of crisis where we have to some degree, grasp the nettle. And I know that the Home Secretary said this herself, I'm getting racist abuse because of the way in which the country feels at the moment divided. And I guess that I'm not a big fan of consequentialist reasoning for any sort of policy, but it seems abundantly clear to me that even Greens need to think about this. We need to think about an immigration policy that has a democratic mandate. For me, the immigration stuff is actually not really about kind of vote catching, even though obviously it appears that way, it appears that Labour are attacking right or whatever. But this feels like a watershed moment for the left generally. I mean, in the EU, right, they're thinking about returns agreements. They're thinking about Rwanda-style policies with countries in North Africa. I personally would like to see Labour go closer to the EU, but that would probably mean we would have some views about immigration that would be closer to them now. So there's a lot at play here that I think through the traditional lenses and heuristics of politics don't really add up on an electoral calculus of the way that we've kind of thought about it traditionally, which is that Labour will tap right to take up Tory switchers, and now because Tory switchers are going to reform, we're going to tap right again to get reform voters. Ultimately, we need to learn about what's been successful with Zack Polanski, which is something that we've known for absolutely ages, by the way, which is that a positive vision that people can unite behind is the way in which progressive politics work best. What is the future that we're imagining? And I don't think Labour really got to the core of that argument yet. And, there's stuff in the Blue Labour analysis, right? If you've read their recent, you go on their Twitter, you can read what they've said. I think analytically, they're correct. Analytically, what they're saying is that the end of, privatisation has been an absolute awful kind of destructive force to our politics, that these deindustrialised communities virtually were forgotten about under globalisation. They say that we need to do something along the lines of reindustrialization, as well as obviously bringing immigration down. I think we need to do something completely different. I don't think we can go backwards in time. I think we need to think about what is that thing that's going to bring us forward. Now, of course, I don't have the answers, guys. I'm 25, right? Just give me a bit of time. Let me cook. But I'm still thinking in my head that ultimately this traditional way in which strategists have been thinking about this politics, as you've correctly pointed out, Michael, is not going to work.
A big problem with Shabana Mahmood is that I'm not sure this policy is going to work for the reasons my guest was saying earlier. So I think you might lose the left without... The only thing that's going to win back reform voters is if you actually stop the votes. It's not talking tough on migration. That's not going to help. And I don't think this policy will. So I think there's a danger that it just pisses off a lot of people and doesn't achieve very much. But we'll see.